Longtime College Football Coach with us on Mondays in the 5 o'clock hour. And what a weekend. Chaos in college football, and I want to see more of it coming up week after week. Phil, there was an article that I was reading, and in the end, they looked at what happened over the weekend. Was this an exception? You always had one or two of these each year, but could this be more consistent? And the article also said there are no great teams in college football any longer. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think we're seeing the product of the portal, coaches, getting different teams in there. I don't think the continuity is what it's been in the past. I do. I believe and I think there's going to be more. I think it's going to be really interesting. They talk about adding teams, 12 teams. It might be harder than ever to pick those top 12 teams.
Phil, it is free agency without the rules that the NFL has. So in order to get kind of a dynasty going again, they're going to have to reestablish some rules, right?
Paul, I think the whole thing has got, and I think Charlie Baker, the NCAA guy, brought it up when the UNLV coach, guy quarterback left. There's got to be a referendum of saying, hey, this is what we're going to allow, this is what we're not. Now, I think today, they approved the payment of player. It was a big day. And hopefully the NCAA, the coaches can get together, get the calendar right, and make this a one-time thing. Right now there's too many portal openings. You have spring, you have summer, one time. If you're leaving, leave, and then go.
Coach, 5 top 15 upsets. Vanderbilt beating Alabama, Arkansas beating Tennessee, A&M beating Missouri, Washington beat Michigan, and Minnesota beat USC. Which one of those jumped off the page the most to you on Saturday?
To me, obviously, the Alabama game. It was just ironic. Of course, we all know we've had those moments. I wish I'd never said that. I'm sure Nick was thinking that when they were playing that on the scoreboard, as they were saying, he goes, every place in the SEC's tough except Vanderbilt. Not a hard place to play. People don't realize that, but their stadium is under construction, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I think there was only a 28,000 person seating in that stadium on Saturday for that game. Though millions saw it on television, not many of them saw it live.
Well, in Arkansas, Sam Pittman, as Craig brought up, got a heck of a win against Tennessee. You obviously reside at Texas A&M University's backyard. I thought that was a team I had not seen. They've won some games, but I haven't seen them that efficient and dominant in a game like that. And maybe Missouri, well, not maybe, overrated too, but I thought that was not flawless, but one of the best wins at A&M in a long time.
Absolutely correct. I sat in a box on the east side 50-yard line and watched every snap, and I thought both sides of the ball, the kicking game, I thought it was the best game I've seen in probably the last 6 or 7 years. I thought a couple of years ago the LSU game at home was a good game that we won. But, yes, it's like I told someone now they've got 2 quarterbacks that they know can win. And not many teams have that, David. And, to have the young man come back who didn't play great versus Notre Dame and play as well as he did, and then get their running game going, it was impressive. Missouri had some chances. I don't know if you watched the game, but Missouri decided to go for it on 4th and 2 at A&M's 40-yard line on the first drive. And they had a terrible interference. And they threw the flag, and then they picked them up. And then A&M went down and just made them pay the rest of the game. I think they scored 7 straight drives. It was impressive.
To A&M, you coached with R.C. Slocum, and he was the most successful coach that A&M's ever had consistently for a long haul. They had pockets here and there, and you know the history very well because you're an Aggie, but he was, for the longest term, the most successful. And the one thing that's always jumped out to me about RC compared to some of the coaches they've had after RC is that he's a no-frills coach. He's no nonsense. It's just about the ball and coaching and building the program. And maybe A&M's personality skewed away from that when they went in the SEC. And Mike Elko seems to be more like RC than anybody they've had in that time since. Am I right there?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt you're right. You know, the only other guy that would probably fit in that would have been Mike Sherman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mike Sherman was a ball coach. And, you know, just that fateful day that Texas, you know, that kicked that field goal. But, yeah, I would agree with that. And one of the things that was impressive to me on Saturday, I watched Mike Elko on the sideline. I know him a little bit. I don't know him well. But he really did a nice job of letting the coaches coach, and he managed the game. You know, they went for it a couple of fourth downs, and, you know, there was never any indecision. I mean, it was a game, as David said, it flowed well. And, yeah, you know, you go back to my coach, Emory Ballard. We had a nice run there when the Southwest Conference was really a powerful conference. And I think now, I think that A&M being in the SEC, of course, I've coached in the SEC. I've been there, and I've always thought it's got great teams, but it's like most leagues, Paul. It's got its upper echelon, then it's got their other people. I'll never forget Steve Spurrier telling us at Dat Wynn's induction way back in 17 in New York. He told this other A&M guy and myself, he said, I really like A&M. I've always thought it was a good place. He said, but I'll just be honest with you. He said, they'll be vying with Arkansas and Ole Miss and those guys, you know, trying to get seventh place. They're not a blue blood. And you know what? Truthfully, that's what people see.
You got to coach in an Oklahoma-Texas game when you were on the OU staff back in the late 90s. Big game this week. Texas, #1 team in the country. Both teams are coming off bye weeks. It seems like Oklahoma's made the pivot at quarterback for the better, although how much better remains to be seen. Just your thoughts on the Red River and where it kind of stacks up amongst the big games in the sport, but also your thoughts on, you know, what these two teams are looking at come this weekend.
Craig, I've been fortunate. I was so fortunate. I started my career at the A&M Texas game. And we even played LSU back then in the early 70s. We had a nice rivalry with them. And then, you know, I've been involved with the Pittsburgh, West Virginia, Indiana, Purdue, the old bucket. People don't realize of all the games, the most drama and pageantry I've ever seen, and I'm talking about just a hatred, is the Texas OU game. I mean, it is, you know, it's one side's crimson, one side's orange, and I mean, it's very, nobody else does it, I don't think. It's split right down the middle. And I'm talking, you see fights going into the stadium, and when you're coming out, they're fighting. I mean, it is during the state fair, it is a electric atmosphere. And, you know, Friday night before the game, I mean, Dallas is rocking. So, you know, I know there's other great games. I would think Michigan, Ohio State, and Alabama and Auburn. But I'm telling you, that's a game that would be hard to match.
When I was in television early, I covered that game a lot on TV and was on the sidelines with a camera. And one time I just sat in the end zone and just looked up and took it in. And it is truly, and anyone who's been there, and you see it a little bit on TV, 50-50 split. It is absolutely phenomenal the way that they set that up. All right, 800-pound gorilla. Baylor up 14-3 on the road in Ames against a really good football team that didn't blink like a Utah or others, and they just kept doing what they do and eventually just bludgeoned the defense. Phil, what's going on, you think? What do you think is the honest thought about Dave Aranda? Can he save his job this year?
I have a dear friend of mine that everybody knows. You would know him. I'm not going to give his name. Former head coach, college. I asked him last week, I said, watch the Baylor-Iowa State game. Tell me your thoughts. I said, they've been close, but it's been no cigar. I said, they've let, since the Colorado game, it's just sort of been hit and miss. And so Sunday morning, yesterday, I called him. And the first thing out of his mouth, he says, they're a team that has some good players, but he said, I don't see many difference makers. Mm-hmm. He said, they're a team that almost has to play perfect to win. And he said, we don't have enough playmakers to make up for our mistakes. And the more I thought about it, he's absolutely right.
Dead on right.
I mean, we don't, on both sides of the ball, we don't have enough playmakers that make us a winning team. And that's what kept us from winning that game Saturday. I thought when number 5 intercepted the ball before halftime on a bad throw by their quarterback, I said, this is the momentum that Baylor needed. And it wasn't. And as you said, they just kept getting stronger. And, well, where were our other running backs? The Reese kid.
Yep.
Is there something going on there?
Well, he's been out. They haven't really, even though they have a bunch of names, none of them have all been healthy at one time. Dominic Richardson out. Bryson Washington missed the first part of the year. Of course, he took a shot on that awkward collision.
I think it's a combination of availability and just like they can't run the football.
You're not going to win a game when someone has 270 yards rushing. I think both the top backs that got 100 yards averaged over 6.5 yards a carry. Mm-hmm. That's tough. And as you said, they stayed with the game plan, and they had more playmakers. And as my guy said, he said, you watch it, and early in the game, I think we all would say this, Baylor played hard. Sawyer came out and did some things, kept some things. We had a couple of good receiving yards, made some plays, but it phased out. And there was no doubt in the fourth quarter, by the time that game, as he said, had evolved to the fourth quarter, it was an ass kicker.
Yeah, it could have gotten worse. Let me ask you a question.
It went from like, hey, you expected to lose that game on the road, top 15 team, but at least it's respectable to like, oh wow, you got your butts kicked, that was a whooping, and now you feel even worse for it somehow.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's very well put, because that's exactly the way I felt. I said, wow, I thought this thing. You think before halftime, and that's why there's 4 quarters, and that's why good teams that have the playmakers, like Iowa State did, they keep playing, and eventually their athleticism and their ability shows up. And this is what my friend told me. He said, it teams like Baylor, I mean, and this is a tribute and yet a knock to Dave. The tribute is he's getting them to play hard, but they're not quite good enough or consistent enough to win, unless they carry it from start to finish. And you know what? He even said, he goes, hey, you just don't know when it's going to happen. It might, they'll beat somebody. He said they'll beat somebody because they're going to have that game that they play a whole game.
All right, I need to ask you this, and you've been on numerous staffs that have been recruiting. Now, the early signing period for most of your career was not there. It was in February, which allowed transitions to happen with coaching changes. Can you, as a university or an athletic department, not make a change, or can you ever make a decision on a coach because you're worried about what might happen to the recruiting class?
Dave, that's a tough question. I think that you're talking to a guy. I got let go with 5 games to go. And you know what? I was okay with it because I told him I wanted to finish out, and we did. I mean, we kept them hard and gave them time to find out, but I'm not sure it's beneficial to do it. I don't know how much of jump it gives you on, number one, finding another coach, and number 2, recruiting. I just don't. Now, here's the thing. You look at portal, and I heard Nick Saban say it. He goes, everybody talks about who's got the number one portal class, who's got the number one recruiting class. Well, the whole thing comes down, and people forget it, is evaluation, picking the right guys. And a new coach comes in, they're not going to be blind of who the athletes are. They're going to know who they want to recruit. And regardless, I can remember when Matt Rule came in, I told Phil, I told some of those other guys, of guys we recruited, we were recruiting, Petrie being one of them, you need to stay with him. The kid, the D lineman from Cedar Park, stay with him. He's a big player. And they did, and it paid off. So I can't tell you that. It's just, when is the best time? It's got to be an executive decision.
Okay. You have, as you said, let go 5 games left in the season. You have coached at a lot of places, had success in some places that didn't go as well. How do you go to work every day knowing that the inevitable is about to happen?
I've always said when you're a football coach, you're renting an office. That's what you're doing. And your rent is paid by wins and losses and behavior. And I don't like the word culture, but the expectancy of your program. And when you're a professional, when you get in this, I had a guy tell me from the get-go. He said, if you're going to get in college coaching, the first thing you better understand, you can't carry your feelings on your shoulder, because you're going to be pissed off 99% of the time. And this was back now, Dave, you remember this. This was back in the day that you just had radio shows.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't like the Twitter where everybody gives their thoughts. And I think there's an amount of pride. I'm telling you, I can. One of the things I was proud of this. I mean, we played. We were about where they were at. We weren't quite good enough to win. We had lost some guys, but my last game at SMU was I think a 4 overtime game against the top 25 of Memphis, and we lost it at the very end. But that becomes a personal thing of who you are, what you're made of, and I know this: Dave Aranda is not. If he is released, that staff, they're going to work their tails off to do the right thing, because you know what? They're all. I've always thought this: people are looking at you more now than they did when you were winning. When things are good, it's easy to say it's the road. When it gets tough, I always go back. I told people, friends of mine, when I was at Baylor, my toughest year was the second year. We weren't very good. We lost some people. And that role we got on, we came back after beating Kansas State and going to the Holiday Bowl. That was the finest coaching job that I've been around by a group of people. Art did a great job. We stayed the course. We beat some really good teams, and we finished the season beating a really good team. So that's when you just buckle up, and you realize it's not about you. It's about what I do, how I do it, and I'm going to show them what I'm made of. It becomes a pride thing.
I knew that those last 2 questions were pointed and also something that you would answer. I didn't know how you're going to answer it, but I knew that you would not in any way dodge the bullet. I appreciate your honesty in both of those cases. Paul?
Phil, this week this is one of the best weeks in college football, like just banger game after banger game. Ohio State and Oregon are this week. You've got Texas OU, like Craig and already talked about. Which one do you think is the most interesting to you?
To me, is the Ohio State-Oregon game. It's going to be played in Eugene, I believe, and there's a lot of intertwined things there. Of course, Coach Kelly, really, took over for Rich Brooks and really had a role there at Oregon. He's known, and him going back and really, I want to see. I'm a huge Dan Lanning fan, and I want to see if they can play defense and tie that potent offense together against the quality team.
Coach, I wondered, all the coaches that you talked to, how much has the expanded playoff maybe juiced up just the season itself for coaches, knowing that there's that opportunity that has never really been there before outside of 4 and, of course, when it was just 2, but just how much does that add to the mix for coaches to know that there's those availabilities if you handle your business along the way and you know, not a lack of room, so to speak?
Craig, I think that it does. It keeps the season live. You know, you're looking at Alabama lost what, 4th or 5th week of season. Hey, they're still in it. You know that. I know that. Tennessee's still in it. And you're not one and done. I mean, like us. I mean, we had to fight like hell when West Virginia. We thought, oh hell, we're out of it. But we fought our way back and won the championship again in 14 and thought we had a chance. But yeah, I think it's so much better, and I think it's the opportunity for more teams. I think it's going to keep it more lively. It's going to keep it more interesting, and I think it's fair. I think that the teams. I think you're going to get a truer champion, and that was the purpose of why they're doing it.
We know you have children. All of them are amazing. You've talked about them before throughout your time and career and also life. But we had one of your sons on last week, Ahmad Dixon. He was honored by Midway for the 4x400 mile relay team. They won a state championship when he was there. They had a ceremony. And then, of course, we discussed later in the year, which we've asked you about too, on the Big 12 championship teams being honored in the game against TCU. That young man, he loves you. You love him. And I just, maybe one of these days we'll have you combo like we're going to get you with Phil Snow.
Oh, I would love to. Ahmad, first of all, his heart is bigger than Texas. I mean, very few times did I ever see him not having a smile from ear to ear. I mean, he would walk in, I would walk in, he'd just be smiling. And he was such a joy because I know this now. And some people, I've coached a lot of great players. This guy had the it, dog or whatever. He was a bad man. I mean, he was a football playing fool. And I never felt so hurt for him in any time in my life as when he hit Boykins at TCU.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you something. I don't know if you remember it, but it was in the first half. And we weren't playing very good on offense. And we had to put his little brother in, Orion, who played lights out. But Ahmad he was playing lights out. And he had to miss the first half of the Texas game that was I think at halftime was a 6-3 game. And when he came back on that field on that cold day in the last game at Floyd Casey Stadium, I'm telling you, I wish I could have taken a picture of our old locker room when our players saw. He came out of the shower, and that number, so he came out. And I mean, our guys, I remember Eddie Lackey. I thought Eddie had knocked him out because he was so glad to see him because he hit it and it was on.
Yeah.
He ended up 30-10.
Yep. You guys smoked him and won the Big 12 title, closed out the stadium. He brought up the Gary Patterson relationship and gave us background on that. And it was from when he recruited Ahmad. And Ahmad, they just didn't like kind of the tone that Gary brought to the table. And that, of course, obviously then Gary was bitter, and coaches can get that way too. But Ahmad was a bad man.
Gary's and I used to tell Ahmad that. I said, hell, we're old coaches. Don't worry about us. Hell, just, do your thing. And Ahmad, that's one of the things I applaud him. I always did. I mean, when it was game time, except for that one play when he became a cheerleader at OU that Thursday night game. And Morton, KJ saved his butt, stopped the quarterback on 4th down. But what a great kid. I'm looking forward to seeing him on the 2nd.
Okay, who did you wear out the most between Sam Hall, Ahmad Dixon, Mike Hicks, or Orion Stewart?
Well, listen, if you talk to all 4 of them, they would all be squealing right now. It's me. You know, I will tell you this. When I first came here, I knew I had a job. I mean, and I don't mean this bad, but they hadn't been very good. And it was just, we had a lot of work to do. And I knew it. And Mike Hicks, I identified him immediately. And I said, okay. I said, somebody called him Cholo. And I told him, I said, that fits you. You're Cholo from here on. And I'm telling you, one time I had some looks from him that if he had a gun, he'd have killed me. But I think it got better as it went through because he won the first game. And we played TCU, and they're driving, and we played a buck cover drive. Hey, beautiful play, and then we lost him for 4 or 5 games, and then when he came back, it was on. He was a phenomenal player, and then of course Orion. And I tell the story on this. Brian Norwood and we talked about where to put Ahmad. And in 11, we had Sam at safety, Ahmad at our nickel, because I thought Ahmad could be a better blitzer. And Brian came to me after the season, and it was his idea totally. He said, I think we would be better off with Ahmad and Sam, and it was a great decision. And we had guys. Our nickel was so important. Sam did a good job. It was a better fit. Ahmad did so much. Ahmad did so much better in space than I thought he would, and that's why he became an NFL player. And of course, Orion was an athlete, and Orion had senses that you couldn't. He just loved to make me mad during practice. I mean, he made it a point. Hey, I'm getting him today, and that was about every other day. I would send his ass in and tell him I wasn't going to play him, and then I'd back off. But I would give him some adjectives before I did. And, the other guy the 2 other guys we had in that nickel that was Colin Brent and what's my guy's name? That left us. Our nickel.
What school? What did
Trigger.
Yeah.
Blanchard.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Trayvon Blanchard. Yeah.
Now I'm telling you, all of those guys were impact players. I mean, every one of them. And I always laugh, but I run it. This coach I was talking about today, we were talking about yesterday. He said, Phil, we got to talking about our players and how we were playing. He goes, nobody. I remember Mac Brown telling me after the Texas game in I guess it was in 11. It was 11 that he goes. Well, who are these guys? We don't even know some of these guys. We had gotten, KJ Morton, Joe. Joe ended
Williams,
up being a heck of a DB for us. And that's why I tell people, and I mean this, if you evaluate and you really look at them and they fit something you do, and then you do what they can do, you can win. And that's one of the things that I think Art Briles and what we did very well there. We took guys, and nobody was thinking Corey Coleman would be as good as what he was. Hell, Corey Coleman could have started anywhere as a running back also.
Yep. Who was his cousin that we had on the show? Was it Kevin Jennings?
Kevin Jennings.
Yeah,
Kevin Jennings from SMU is Corey's cousin. Yeah, absolutely.
Had a hell of a game.
Had a huge game against Louisville. What about that?
Yeah.
The Mustangs showed up.
Yep. They are feeling awfully good, and they should be. Hey, great memories, great stories. Thanks for your insight on certain teams and what's happening with college football. Our audience loves this segment. We do too, and we love you too, Phil. Thanks for your time.
We appreciate you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bill Bennett with us on 365 Sports.